It's good to see everyone tonight. Kind of a cold night to be out, but at least it's warm in here, and we appreciate your making the effort to come out. Last week we began a series of 3 or 4 devotionals dealing with some of the characteristics or qualities of God. And we're not going to take the time to try to review last week, except to say we dealt with the first characteristic of God, and that is the omnipresence of God. God is everywhere at all times. This evening I want to talk about a second characteristic or quality of God, and that's simply the omniscience of God. And omniscience is not a word that we'll perhaps use a lot today, but if you look in Webster's, the word omniscient means having infinite awareness, understanding, and insight. Secondly, possessed of universal or complete knowledge. And that second definition is the one that we apply usually to God in using this term, universal or complete knowledge. And to put it simply, God knows everything. Think about that. God possesses all knowledge. He is unlimited in His knowledge. You know, maybe you know people that know everything there is to know about cooking, or they know everything they need to know about engineering or math or some other subject. But think about God as a being who knows everything about everything. And that's difficult for us to comprehend. With our human limitations, we can't fathom someone or something, some being who knows everything there is to know. And perhaps God's omnipresent helps explains the fact that He knows everything. God is everywhere, and so He knows everything there is to know. Think about that. Nothing is withheld from the knowledge of God. And over in the Old Testament, there are verses that talk about the knowledge of God. 2 Chronicles 16:9. For the eyes of the Lord run to and fro throughout the whole earth. And then, of course, Daniel chapter 2 and verse 22. Listen to what Daniel says describing God. He revealeth the deep and secret things. He knoweth what is in the darkness, and the light dwelleth with Him. Think about it. God knows not just our outward being. God knows our heart. God knows our innermost thoughts, our innermost desires. He knows everything there is to know about us. And that realization should make us want to live better, to be better. The idea that we can't hide our actions from God. You know, sometimes young people can hide things from mom and dad, maybe for years. We might hide things from our boss. We might hide things from our friends at church, from our spouse. But we can't hide things from God. In fact, Hebrews 4:13 says, neither is there any creature that is not manifest in His sight, but all things are naked and opened unto the eyes of Him with whom we have to do. And so because God is omnipresent, because He is everywhere, He sees everything that we do. He knows everything that we do. And again, this is something that's hard for us to really comprehend, the all-knowing God. He sees not only the good things that we do, but He also sees the things that are not so good in our lives. And we could look back at the Old Testament at several examples. Now, before we close, I want to make a quick observation about the omnipresence of God and the omniscience of God. I would contend to you tonight that it is impossible for anyone to know absolutely that there is no God. You know what an atheist is? An atheist is someone who says there is no God. On the other hand, the agnostic says, I don't know if there's a God. I'm not sure there's a God. I can see the agnostic point of view more than the atheist. And you say, well, why is that? To prove that there is no God, to be absolutely certain that there is not a God in the universe, you would have to have the quality or the characteristics of being omnipresent. You would have to be everywhere in the universe at all times to be able to say, I know there's no God, because the one place where you are not might be the very place that God is. Not only would you have to be omnipresent to know for certain that there is no God, you would have to be omniscient, have all knowledge. Because the one piece of knowledge, the one fact that you don't know might be the fact that there is a God. And so the atheist can say, I know there is no God. But in order for them to know certainly that there is no God, they have to possess 2 of the qualities of deity. They have to be omnipresent, all places at all time. They have to be omniscient, knowing all things, having all knowledge. And thereby they would become the very thing that they refuse to accept, deity or God. Next week we'll look at another characteristic or quality of God, but we're going to close our devotional at this time by extending the invitation of Christ. Tonight, if you've never yet rendered obedience, if you've not become a child of God through obedience to His will, you can do so that you can stand before God in the day of judgment and you can hear Him say, "Well done, good and faithful servant," with the knowledge that you have obeyed Him, that you have lived the Christian life to the best of your ability. If you're not a Christian, you can come in faith, repenting, turning from your sins, confessing the name of Christ, and being baptized for the forgiveness of your sins. Tonight, if you need to respond to become a Christian or perhaps to simply ask for the prayers of the church, you have the opportunity to do so. Will you come while we stand and we sing?